हाँ
ऊपर कर दो।
ऊपर नहीं, इतना बस है।
आधा स्क्रीन आ गया है।
अच्छा अच्छा आई थिंक दिस इज अ लिटिल ठीक है ठीक है बेस्ट
video camera this yeah but it's not coming but it's amazing it's aligning sir
okay
hi everyone we can start the session so I will just request the chair Mr. Anil Kashyap to sit maybe we need to arrange chairs for all the abstract presenters.
That's okay. Presentation.
Yeah, they just
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Hello, Shweta. So you both are okay, Shweta and okay, perfect. So we have got at least 5 papers now.
yeah.
Yeah, we can start. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this first session of ILDC 2025. This is Land Governance Trilemma, Securing Rights, Ensuring Equity, and Planning for Climate Resilience in rapidly urbanizing India. So it's very interesting session in terms of the kind of spread of topics which we are going to hear. Presenters are Dr. Shweta is here and Dr. Bose. I'm not sure Dr. Pradeep Nayak is around. That one paper we are missing. Then Dr. Prasad with his team and Dr. Malini as well. So if we look at the order here, so we can start with Dr. Bose. Yeah. So Dr. Bose is assistant professor in ICFAI University in Tripura, and his paper title is Displacement, Homelessness and Affordable Housing in Urban India, Issues and Problems. So, welcome to Dr. Bose for his presentation, and we have got 90 minutes for this session. So, maybe I'll keep the time and maybe like 15 minutes, yeah, and then some time for question answer and then transition as well. So, at least we can have the session finished on that. Alright, so over to you.
Sorry, it's a PDF, so I can't.
Yeah.
All inches, sir. All.
just by influence.
My topic displacement, homelessness and affordable housing types in urban India, issues and problems. So we are all aware with this issue of rapid urbanization. We cannot control these things, and that is quite obvious, and we have to accept the fact of urbanization. So what is the solution? The solution is that effective governance. We need effective governance. What are that kind of governance? In recent time, if we look at the governance system, we can follow in urban governance. They are mostly in our urban governance, basically connected to the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. And from that point of view, the whole urban governance is dependent on the state fund and state-related direction. So in urban area, governance is basically controlled, monitored by the state government and their policies. So because we know that every city has a different kind of problem, and if we try to save that solution, that problem into a single lens, it will be not be possible. Because the city-wise, the problem is different and the solution is different. And for that solution, we need the local initiative, and for that, each urban governance or each urban government have to be more stronger to get that effectiveness regarding the policies making. Next is the equitable resource allocations. The first thing is correct. The second point is connected to the first one. When the urban governors will get more power to control the resources, so they will be easily allocate the resources. That where the land is there, where is we have to create a dump yard, all the things we have to create that thing and improve quality of life. Because whatever we making the standard, we making standard from the state perspective. We are not focusing on the exact city, what kind of quality of life in that particular city. So city-oriented decision making or policy making should be there, and for that reason, now I return back to the first point. We need a effective, strong urban governance. Till now, if we get the data from the different kind of elections in the cities or in the urban governance, we find that what are their qualifications, what are their knowledge about the urban governance, that is so poor. So that's why next, the displacement is quite obvious, because due to that urbanization, we need new land. From where we will get the land? For the displacement. From different aspects, we have to accept the displacement. There are several reasons. If India as a nation try to organize any kind of mega event like sport, we know that in Commonwealth Games there are a lot more people are displaced in Delhi. There are different mega projects was there, and for that we need land, and mostly we need that we have to accept that displacement. So now the point is that who are the person who are displaced? We basically know that they are the farm dwellers. They are the person who living in that periphery of the urban system. So we have to accept those persons who are staying there. We cannot say that they are the outsider, because it is very tough for them to work in the urban city. Because for running a city, we need those human resources, and we have to give them that quality of life, which I talked about in my last slide. That for that affordable housing, or housing itself a very important thing for that thing. Now the how we can achieve that portion of this affordable housing, that is community empowerment participation. We push them to the outside. We should accept them, and we should give them the chance to participate in this urban process. The land regulation is very important thing. The second point that is mentioned about that state should focusing on the urban land or the urban governance. They have to identify the land where there is vacant land, where we can manage the land, because we know in each city, in each state, there are so many government landowners there. Next was the property titling. So property titling also a very important thing, it is connected. And the land pooling and redevelopment. We have to, or the government, with the help of civil society and private organization have to get and organize those land. The slum upgradation, all the slum is there in every city, in every tier 1 city there are so many slummers there, and we have to upgrade that slum. That's I witnessed in the last evening when we are staying at All India Institute of Local Self-Government. I just take a tour there, but is that so we are witness what happened with the Ahmedabad city when beside the two sides of the Sabarmati river when they constructed the wall. What are the purposes? I was not getting into that, but we have to create the wall to hide the things. We need to upgrade those urban walls. So otherwise, it is not possible because they are part and parcel of our society. Now that next thing is that private-public partnership. We have to create that bonding. We have to give the access to the private entities to enter into here. Otherwise, we should welcome them, come and prepare some good initiative by which we can create an incremental housing, and that is self-help approach. Because if we get the data from them, they will think that these slum people, they think they are basically are not be in the position to accept them. The common city dwellers, they are not accepting them. That reality they also understand. So next is that because I just so it is something changes was made. I think slide was changed. Next slide will be this alternative housing option. We need that group housing is very important in this case. So group housing is that which basically we commonly known as in the upgraded area that is called as the gated society, gated community. Like this, we can create a group housing where all these slum people, those who are low income groups, or they should be get into that housing project or this housing initiative. That is the first. Second alternative is the cooperative housing. We have to create the cooperative housing. It is quite similar with the group housing. Here the private entity will give some subsidy. Next, the institutional housing. Nowadays, Government of India, I just forgot the exact project. Government of India under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, they created this institutional housing where government build the housing and give that to the person and they just make a deed, or where those who want, they apply, and after that is allotted. Next, the rental housing is the fourth option by which government can earn the people will earn the respect to get the affordable housing within the city by paying the rent. And last one is the hostel is there, because we know due to that due to that migration, lots more people are living in the city, only staying here, but their family are staying in the outside. So they need this rental setup. That is the best thing for them. They will stay there, one or two people will occupy there, and they will go, just like hostel which we used to stay at the time of our university days or college days. So next thing that is that concern is that this model is very model is PPP model, because we know government have the limitation relating to their resources. So first option of this thing is that the government led based subsidized model. In all these things government have, because I just compare with one thing. We are concerned about this word called eminent domain. At the time of displacement, government have the authority to get or identify any land, and they just reuse it for the development purposes, for creating any kind of army auxiliaries and anything. So why not government will use this power, eminent domain, at the time of preparing or allocating the vacant land for creating this affordable housing. So in these all things, the government have to identify the land. First is the government-based subsidized land, where the government will identify the land and they will welcome the person, welcome the private NGO, the housing boards. They will engage, they will invest their money, and then the houses will be delivered to the person, to the allotted person, and the government will pay the amount to that housing board will create the house. Next is the mixed developed cross subsidized board. In this case, the government will, in this case, government will do the same thing, but here the government will only provided the land, and the money they will organize, that is from the LOD. Next is the annuity based subsidized model, where government will not give the money at lump sum amount. 10 years or 15 years, just what is happening with the bridges. After construction of bridges, government give the chances that you will pay tax, earn taxes from there for the 10 years or 15 years. So in this case, government will not pay the money, the whole sum money. They will pay annuity based for the 10 years. Next, the annuity come capital grant based subsidy. In this case, government will first they pay 50 or 40% of the amount, then gradually the government will pay the amount to the these building owners, those who the company, those who create the building. Then and the third and fifth in the direct relationship with the housing, that is where the LOD. So government will allot the land first. Second, the private entity will create the housing, and then last step will be the owner. Here owner is those who are wishing to get the flat or to get the land or to get the house. They will pay the money and they will get the land. Last one is the option that rental housing I talked about last time. That rental housing, where after creating that house building, they will send it, deliver to the state, and state will look after, the government will look after their rental process, how much rental will be there, what will be the increment process, and they will do the deed for 10 years, 15 years, and after that they will increase the common thing which we common people are accessing. So this is the solution. Yes, I know almost. So this is from my viewpoint, this is the solution for get a affordable housing, because house give us respect, house give us protection, house give us the connection with that particular land. So without house, it is very tough for them. Somehow, if we are forced to rent a land in an importance of the house, and if this person, those who are staying for 2 generations, 3 generations within the big cities, with the tier 1 cities, so then that is the thing. So my second observation throughout this study, I am reading this some of the literature on these things. Rather we focusing on tier 1 city, because it is complicated level. So rather if we focusing this model in tier 2 or tier 3 city, and if we give them the alternatives, I think in tier 2 and tier 3 city there will be no scarcity of land. Government have more land than tier 1 cities. So they can easily implement this process, and by which those people, those who are ready to come due to that urbanization, or those who are staying here in a very tough condition, they can get the alternative to move to the tier 2 or tier 3 cities for better project. And this kind of project should be highlighted by government and as a facility, that we are not only facilitate the person who pay the more taxes, we will also give the facility to those persons who don't pay taxes but pay their labor for the development of this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting.
The question will come at the
Yeah.
end.
What do we do? Like we
I
can
think
have a question.
it will be easy, sir. After that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Otherwise
Thank
it will take more time.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks. And next presenter is Dr. Malini. And her title of the presentation is Notification, Denotification and the Reproduction of Inequality, the case of Khed SEZ in Pune, Maharashtra. Okay, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Let me take an anticipate again. I am not an urban economist. I am trained an economist, but in this particular
research and trying to bring in a mixed method approach. So you know that you have to bear if there is any urban studies specifically flaws are there. So yeah, so notification, denotification and reproduction of the inequality in the case of a KSCZ. Yes, this is the outline of the presentation. Let me straight away get into that. For those who are not aware of what the SEZ is, it's a policy which was introduced by the government of India in 2001 for the export promotion. Assume this is the area. So this particular completely area is earmarked for the industrial activity, and whatever is being produced is export. If it comes here, even within India, it is considered as an export, and if this particular person is buying, then it is an import. So it is completely 100% illegal. Now it is a 2005 is the year when this SEZ Act came into picture. Now if I in retrospect, if I try to look into what has happened in the last 2 decades, what we see is that the 2 decades has seen more of an apprehension than an appreciation. Why am I saying so? On the one hand, there is a government data that says that SEZs are able to contribute 1/3 of the country's total export. On the other hand, we have a CAG report which says that actually much of the investment happened, a realignment of investment from here to here rather than actual increase in the investment, because there were a lot of incentives which were given with this particular industrial cluster that is happening. On the other hand, there is also apprehension that import intensity is too high on this SEZ export. It means net export is really very bleak is concerned. In the midst of everything, of late, there is a steep increase in the number of the denotification. Again, CAG report claims that much of this has to do with once they have received 5 years and 10 years of an tax incentive, they don't have any more fresh things to do. So they are going back to their initial status of an industrial entity rather than considering themselves an SEZ, because then they cannot sell it in the domestic market. So under this assumption, there is a lot of a steep increase in the number of denotification of SEZ. Whether if you look into the policy document or academia, it's just considered notification to denotification just as an administrative activity, administrative purpose, rather than seeing that what has happened to the life and livelihood of the people who are dependent upon that particular. So they were the economics and the mixed method approach I'm trying to bring in and try to understand what is happening in the whole process. So so what is the approach that I have taken? I will introduce in a while about the KSCZ. So it is, as I said, it is largely mixed method approach. So total sample is 106. So I have a representative from zone authority, and I have a village panchayat official. I have a locals who have lost the land, and the agricultural labor who are working in someone else's land, but they are the landless. They are labor. They don't have any employment. The rehabilitation and resettlement units are there. So the colonies, labor colony operator. So all kind of different stakeholders who are part of the whole process in between notification and denotification is what my the complete sample cohort is concerned. Now, why did I choose the KSCZ? The KSCZ, there are it's a cute arrangement between the conglomeration, the industrial conglomeration versus the state and the MIDC, Maharashtra Industrial Development Corporation. It acquired the land and it transferred the land to the SEZ here. Now, when at the time of acquiring the land, I gave a promise to the people that along with the compensation, I'm ensuring that one person in your family is going to get employment. But then when I asked the developer to pitch in, I did not put that particular clause to the developer. Now the developer, just like any Shobha developer or whatever the prestige developer you have, is just going to raise a building there, and he is going to let some other exporting unit to come and operate there. He did not put that particular clause, right? So there is a people affected who are actually their life was dependent upon this particular land which was taken, which eventually got denotified on the same clause saying that it is export market is not so much feasible, rather we want to do it in the in the domestic market. At the same time, the government is trying to say that they are contributing to 1/3 of country's total export. So it is quite contradictory. So there where I am trying to fill the gap between. In the initial phase, that 4,000 plus for land was taken from Nirma, Raudi, Thalesa and the Gaipur, and then in a while that how the land was taken, it was largely taken from the, if I have to talk about the social segregation, from the Maratha and Khatri families who invariably belong to OBC and the general merit, and then there were a Tata community who belonged to the ST community. And since this Maratha community had the organization power, they had a social voice, the negotiation of the land, and if you look into the map of a SEZ, a denotified SEZ, is put in such a way that less fertile land, but more of that the fallow land was taken. And because these country, these Tata communities are the one who are voiceless, they did not know how to socialize, how to mobilize their that social assets per se. So that there is a different. The locals are not one cohort here. The kind of economic power there comes with here. Now, so it is eventually denotified, as I said. So, out of that 4,200, 100 acre is what remains as an SZ, and only one exporting unit is operate here. Rest of them others comes under the DDA there, right? But the land was taken under the SZ regime here. Now, what is the finding? The finding, there are different findings, but I am just trying to present only under the three. But the notification and the denotification, the process reinstitute the inequality. Why am I telling that? There is a clear demarcation after how the rehabilitation happened. There is a one RR method and another one is RR colony. The RR colony, which was for the upper caste and the OBC, is adjacent to the factory boundary or the where the actually hardcore industrial cluster is there. On the other hand, RR method was kept very away from the mainstream, and they don't even have access to that agriculture. They don't even have an access to job which these companies are coming. This is that or non-SZ doesn't matter. One, and at the same time, the kind of the infrastructure which is there in both the settlements are quite contradictory to each other. Now, at the time of the acquisition of the land, the MIDC did assure that we are going to give an employment. In order to make you employable, we will give it a that will set up an ITF. So ITF did come up in Rajguru, but then none of this that capability could avail it because they are a generation illiterate family. So in order to avail ITI, you definitely need minimum 10 plus. So technically they could never, that none of the family from that Maratha, this ST community, they could avail any of these benefits. On the other hand, that a few of the affiliate OBC and the general merit, they could avail the benefit and they could be made a part of SZ or non-SZ unit, whatever it is there. Now that is a one part of it. Second, so in short, that as I said, it is a very tip of the iceberg that I am presenting here. In short, what actually I try to argue in this particular section is it to a greater extent shows that how contemporary capitalist development in India reinstitute the inequality which collaborate with the existing set of literature. Now, the second question is whether the benefits are equally split, because I said under the phase where 4 villages are taken, right? So there are different approaches to it. So one approach that I followed is taking the LULC, that is land use land change cover, in the 5, 10, 20 kilometer radius within this KSZ. As you can see, this is agricultural land is a yellow, okay, build up is this. We will concentrate only on these two. Apparently there is a steep decrease in agricultural land in all the 4 villages, but when it comes to built up area, that actually talks about the industries, that talks about the migrant economy, it could it could talk about any ancillary service which is coming up, and even a simple community road, building or whatever in that particular village, it is not equally spread across all the 4 villages. There is a skewed in with respect to let me show this particular one. Among the 4, Ganesan and the Ningwa is the one. This particular shows in each village how much land was taken. As again, this Ganesan and the Ningwa, this representation of here, there is an 18 company which are within the boundary of this Ganesan village. As a result, I have more tax revenue coming from Forward and Ningwa, whereas these two are completely dependent upon the government outlay, one, a small component, and another one is that agricultural and simple house tax that in village they pay. So this is just a representation to show that not all the 4 villages are equally benefited from having an SZ. There is a skew one. As a result of this, the expenditure kind of an infrastructure that has come up in each of these villages is also is very different. So in short, that foreign versus periphery, what we have in urban economies, is something that we have seen very clearly in the field. Now, third, and with this I close on the issue of the job migration and the local. If you remember in the beginning, I said that MIDC is the one which took the land and it handed over to the Kalani. Kalani developed the land and it invited the companies to settle. Now, MIDC gave assurance to you, as a local, you might actually acquire the land. That one job and then ITI training will be given. It was very transparent so far as the compensation and the land transfer is concerned. But assurance was not something very transparent. And when it was subsequently given to the Kalyani, and Kalyani to some other exporting unit when it was given up, so it was not very, it was never written in any way. As a result, these companies always preferred that migrants over the locals. If you look into the data, which again mostly of the data that I'm not sharing here, out of the total employment, 78% of the employment that generated within SEZs are given to the locals, and you might say that 22%. These 22% are gardener, housekeeping staff, and the security job, which is being given to the locals, that comes from the OBC, that is and the upper caste community, and not to the local. So basically, and that's a one part of it. Two, this affiliated locals who had the asset of a land, they could build the migrant colony or the labor hostel, and they could get that investment out of the capital they already had. So basically, in short, in the middle of this, that notification and denotification, though it was considered as only administrative process, but it has changed significantly. And here I am representing only one case study, and just think about what it could have been at the all India level, specifically for the voiceless, and that there are the person who is gaining is entirely different than persons who has lost the different. If I have to bring the economics part of me and bring it here, welfare economics, Pareto optimality, which is saying, we say that the person who is gaining should be able to compensate here, whereas it is other way around in this particular context. So with this, I think I already summed all of this. I would like to stop here, sir.
Thank you. And a round of applause to Dr. Martin. Very interesting finding. I think you have gone really deep into the whole social setup and the business setup of people and how these operates in these circumstances. So thank you very much, and we'll come back to the question. Next presenter, Dr. Pradeep Nayak. Dr. Nayak is Additional Revision Commissioner, Board of Revenue in Orissa. Please come forward. And his presentation title is Who Owns Land in the Capital City, Bhubaneswar? Changing Land Use, Facets of Land Disputes and Revision Courts in Securing Property Rights. So, over to you. So we have got 12-13 minutes, 15 minutes left. Yes, yes. Slides में कर दो.
There, Anand sir. Chair, Anand sir, and other dear participants. I want to thank in this presentation I will be talking about So I will be speaking about my experience in handling revision courts. Revision courts basically the apex court in land revenue almost all states because we have similar nature of land record. So we have the Tahsildar, the grassroots level officer or assistant settlement officer, then you have settlement officer or sub-collector or agent, then you have collector, then you have member board of revenue. Division otherwise some divisional commissioner or revenue divisional commissioner. So, in Odisha, we have member board of revenue, is the apex authority in operating land records. So what happens that, as you know, in India, after 30 or 40 years, we update our land records. So those who have not got their land records updated, so service settlement, or those who have not attended the settlement, so what happens? Their record of rights remain old. They remain in the name of grandfathers, great grandfathers, or even those who have purchased from their earlier tenants. They failed to attend the last settlement. The record of right will start in the name of the vendor who had sold the land. So what is happening? Someone is owning the land, so someone is possessing the land. Legally possessing, but illegally no. So this creates fraud in almost all places in India, because after the death of the vendor or the owner, the son or the grandson, they sell the land because you don't know when our father sold. You don't care. So they go and sell the land. So revision board is the only officer. After those who fail to attend the land settlement, the revision board will move in. The extraordinary power to update the land record is the highest constitutional authority. After that, there is no appeal. While they read the jurisdiction which apply, they will go to Supreme Court. High Court, sorry, High Court. The revisional authority is all various sections I will give you. It is not technical things, various different act, in Odisha state abolition, service settlement, different provisions we have. Revision powers, revision courts. I just give the hierarchy, the settlement, assistant consultation officer, deputy director consultation, or director consultation, even settlement officer, assistant settlement officer, revision commission, the hierarchy we have. But the revision board is the ultimate authority set out to settle the land dispute. So this principle, I will say that after holding 3 years of revision course, I came to a conclusion that most of the people who buy papers, they do not buy land. Bhubaneswar so much complicated. And the state is also playing important role contributing land dispute. We are unable to solve. So we are in the we are the only the state is the only authority ultimately to settle the land dispute. So we have to process in courts, but it is the state which plays very critical role creating so many land disputes and so many things, creating inadequate land records, property rights. These are all technical. So what are the land disputes? Apart from record of rights, for example, everybody have your name, your extent of ownership. You have also map problems. For example, if you have purchased 1 acre, that 1 acre land should be accurate, north, south, boundary should be accurate. Or otherwise there will be mismatch. Then secondly, your land classification should be same. Your homestead land should be used as homestead loan. Then thirdly, you should rent. Your rent payment should be also updated. So different aspects you have to go into. So this kind of issues are cropped up. So we look into the process. We issue notice to that person against whom you have filed the case. For example, I have purchased land from him. So I will issue notice. I will papers that I issue notice. And here and get the land records updated in my name, because though I have purchased land to register selling, but still it is continuing in ownership. So I will issue notice. So even after his death, so we will issue notice to legal heir. Even if that legal heir is not available, we will issue notice in newspaper, local newspaper. So in that process. So secondly, those who have purchased the land, for example, if they are died on the winter, so their legal heirs will also have to give to source, which what happens many times. When I have purchased the land after my death, my son, only one son will file the case for grabbing the land. They will black out, they will suppress the name of daughter. So you have to see the legal heirs those are applying, they have their own land or they are claiming the land, so they should have proper legal heir. Even those who will issue notice, you should have a legal heir. Because you should issue notice, without issuing notice, without the opportunity of being heard, we cannot correct the land records. So this is the procedure I told you. This is how the revision program and the extraordinary authority, high court, to revise any land record. So what is happening? Somebody prepares the land record, revision board revise the entire scheme of things. Then Tahsil land will go to authority, maintains land record. How? Purchase, sale, change of conversion, or land acquisition, or certain land become irrigated. So further maintains land record, like engineer maintains the housing, continuous process. But the entire house can be designed and change while the revision code can be. And that things have passed law. So settlement process is over. This is all about revision code about one. So what is our focus then? Our main focus is to update the land record. Because I told you somebody is possessing land, somebody is illegally owning the land. So always in India, you always contradict the dilemma of who owns the land or who is legal owner, who is the legal possessor. So owner and possessor is different sometimes. Sometimes we have so much difficulty when possession flows title or title flows possession. I have the title, I have got the revenue, this is my land, but he is not possessing the land. So what we do when the laws are available? So his possession should be respected in the absence of the law or the title. The same way Supreme Court said, no possession should be ultimate authority possessing. Title should be some valid, through registration deed, or through legal error, or through allotment something. So always confused whether possession followed title or title because he has title the possession will go. Before he is not possessing. So this kind of dilemma we always have that they put my topic here, dilemma and trilemma. So who is owner of the land, who is so? Now let us come to that. So as I told you, civil nature of case, we issue notice, we hear, we put different dimensions of the issue, land dispute, in detail. But sometimes various disputes like adverse possession, for example, I am possessing the land continuously, openly, hostile possession, where uninterruptedly 30-40 years, so this revision code cannot be valid, civil code should be adverse possession. Then there is an easement issue, there are so many people are using this land for road, so this revision code cannot do. Then there is also the right title, for example, those who are fighting, some people who are fighting or some villagers are fighting some issue, right title, interest of the land should be declared. We can so adverse possession, right title, interest of typical property nature, we cannot handle that. Or estate, somebody died, that's living man, no legal error. Who will decide the property? Estate. You have different acts, many states have different acts. Estate act, the quality inquiry, who has the legal error. Then the property should go to the state estate act. So revision court, the quasi judicial authority has no authority to do this aspect of land dispute. So what dispute then we do? So I told you, so when we decide this land dispute, we look into the flow of title, where we purchase, from whom we purchase, what kind of land, the first land or state land or SCST land, when you have taken permission from SCST, sub-collector to purchase of land, or have taken permission from endowment commission before you purchase the land, or did because with some facet of uniform civil code operates in India. If among Hindus, for example, only under section 8(1)(c) of Hindu Minor and Guardian Act, a child below 18 years cannot sell the land. Hindu Minor Guardian. Other similar people cannot sell the land. But here it can. One civil code will permit. Why that minors will be brought to the registry public to sell the land from below 18 years? So that is the act. So minor cannot sell the land. Sometimes rules are out of deliberately. This they write on behalf of minor, I am saying, no, you don't have right. Only that person will do with a measure, otherwise you can take the permission. So sometimes this is the important right of purchaser and subsequent purchaser. Particular strip of land has been purchased several times, so many persons. So what will decide? The person, the first person who will be given possession or subsequent possessor person will be given the title. So that is the typical problem. Then we have also limited back, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years back. After that they coming back, saying that I don't know, so many settlement or I will update my records. 50, so we have to look into the limitation aspects. Then after that, even after final publication in Google 7, 2030, land records are finally updated, reaching up to 25. So poor settlement operation, we always look into the whenever any issue comes, when the land records are finally published. So poor settlement after 2013, we never do it. We can call their maintenance of record, sale, purchase, transfer, all these do. But before settlement, those who fail to attend to settlement, we will do it. All these same technical various sections I told you, we always look into what is the current record, what is the old record, what are the how you choose the block title, then we will decide this block. So all this our repetition is there. Civil code. So we have khewa. So there are different khewa 1, khewa means this is land record 10 year old. Those we have central government land, we have state government land, we have also daily land, we have khasma land in Bhubaneswar. The Britishers had their own khas, own land. They had this own land. City-based areas, small patches, they brought traders from outside Odisha, they get them land. So khasma land we have also. So that kind of property. Then we have Roki the Onavali Khata, the reserve land for future development purposes. We have Sikkim land, the kind of soft land. For example, I am Brahmin, I will put land, I have to get from the rich in my farmhouse. So that portion of land has given perpetual ownership to that village for rendering service to my land for seeking much reward of my land. So even if I sell that somebody, this person will be seeking or subtenant, sub-proprietor of that land. So you cannot remove it, like your Operation Borga, West Bengal, the kind of system. So I am Borga, I am holding the land of Dada, I am cultivating in Dada and sell the land somebody, I am cultivating there as a subtenant. You cannot throw me out. But in Odisha we have system, but this is to liberalize. That person you have to give me some market rate to remove his name, settle the land. That person. For example, I have 5 land, 50, 60 days I have given the village to occupy my land, to cultivate land. That person I will settle the land. Sikkim land. Then we have Gapha, orchards land, various kind of fruit bearing land. Then we have Mina land, homestead land are granted to extra holders. So different land we have. Then you also problem is when Bhubaneswar came up in 1950, massive land like in the pattern of Chandigarh, we decided to give need of land zoning person. Then when government said they found that you are using land for different purposes, they resumed the land, took away. Many persons went to Bhubaneswar with the High Court, they brought the stay, but many people they failed to bring the stay. So later on when settlement also happened in 2014, government all of a sudden brought back the land to our government khana. So they have filed cases in division for 1,000 cases. The High Court is not intervening, they are jungle land, native land, forest land, devoted land. So it is very complex. Most of the people that are occupying this kind of land in Bhubaneswar, because Bhubaneswar is situated 70% land in jungle. You know, forestly some land is changing direction very close.
Sir, 2 minutes.
Okay. Yes. So then I will straightway come to various kind of disputes. So I will go to the disputes in land and boundary, mismatch of spatial and textual entries of land sold by joint recording. When 4 or 5 persons they say the land is very difficult, say wrong recording of spatial map which does not match with the possession. So your map is here, but the possession that side. Then many 2 persons they file for exclusive recording of land dispute. And when they are filing the case, list pending transfer. When filing the case, they will transfer the land somewhere, they will save somebody. So very difficult. So they are filing a case for operating land and sometimes they manage to sell the land. So multiple purchase of land, dispute over access to railroad or colonized protect scheme. So they have done with the protect scheme, they are asking for a road. You give this road. We had a road, but you correct the land records in the roads. So then fraud in the land grabbing, government land, then selling the value land to home buyers, manipulating land records. Transfer of land involving post-settlement, transfer and final publication of record rights. Then illegal settlement of government land by lease and non-availability of records thereof. Transfer of the land in joint holding by one of the co-sellers with the consent of co-other, co-seller, co-personal. My brothers, one brother sold entire property, even sisters here. Later on they are coming back, they are creating so many issues. So how can we sell the land? My co-son here. Then transfer of daily land, Lord Lingaraj, the temple city, massive land are recorded in the name of various temples. They are selling the land, this Sevai, Supreme Court final clear that Sevai temple users have no right to sell the daily land. Because they are only there to render the services. Different kind of different land. But they are selling the land also. The jungle, non-forest use, which is some dispute over change of classification of land use, wrong entry in the record of right during service and various historical and grammatical areas have been there. So you have to find that case. Transfer of land involving dispute, inheritance and successor matters. Again, the cases. Then errors in the land preparation record right, land disputes over the lands allocated to soldiers, Jawali, landless, homesteadless person. Then in Odisha we introduced to the 2 child, they will get green card holder. They got the land, they get the sold land, they become again landless person. Those jobs are in the land, they come back to the division for keep the product, but we cannot transfer the the land. So again, the land as social person, so western the policy, the survey settlement operation, the political, then all these cases, all this. So I'm concluding the challenge is how to keep the sustain the political ethical interest of our bureaucrats who update these various challenging, technically complex, very mind-boggling, tedious work about it to be record by property. This is a fundamental foundational issue of land, because when you go for this urbanization, this settlement, SEJ, urban land, land record, the property right ownership in this society is very complex. So this is the whole issue. Hardly any further in video or reducing their eyes of the world. They do not take it, they do not, they are because it requires massive reading or passage your ethical commitment, very complex issue. So this can be very much.
Thank you. Very interesting, topic about land rights and ownership. This is one of the challenge. If you Google land, related challenge in India is something related to clear title and ownership. So thank you very much again. Next presenter with us is Dr. Prasad Pathak and his team. The title is Land Transition. Oh yes. Okay. All right. Over to you, Neha. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and respected delegates and participants. It's a pleasure to demonstrate our study, which is titled Urban Expansion, Land Surface Temperature, and Local Climatic Zones. Remote sensing insights from renewable movement. So basically, in this study, we are trying to assess Pune city in a framework of local climatic zone, and we are trying to link it to a land surface temperature transition that are happening in variable areas. So our focus is the peripheral newly added villages of Pune city, which are undergoing a rapid land transformation, and how the climate or the thermal environment of these areas are happening with respect to the development that is happening right now. So this is the focus of our study. So we'll start off with, of course, the background of what is the climatic studies that are happening in urban environment and how they are transforming into a local climatic zone framework. What is the need of that framework? And of course, we will then skim through what is the development or the urban development scenario in the currently in Pune city. And then we will illustrate our findings, and we will just demonstrate how it can transform into the urban planning and urban policies. So hopefully you will bear with us. So we'll start off with skimming through what are the global studies and how are they there. So of course, urbanization and urban expansion is the typical theme that we are discussing here in this session. And this urbanization phenomenon is quite recent, but it's transforming the land mosaics around our urban environments. So with the background of that, it's the urban environments are changing in terms of pollution, wind flow, and so many things. But the climatic studies are much more focused in the temperature variations in the urban environment. So of course, the first thing that came into the focus was the temperature increase in the urban areas with respect to the rural areas. So in European cities or European context, the studies were undergoing, it was observing that the urban areas are having more temperatures than the surrounding rural areas. So that was the first thing that focused on the urban heat island effects. So illustratively or consequently, these studies started focusing on what are the causes of these heat island effects. But the urban phenomenon is not a very objective definition. Urban concept as a concept, it's increasing in spatial terms as well as conceptual terms. So there are quite a lot of versions of urban. There are suburban areas, there are peri-urban areas, which are transcending itself to a peripheral rural areas. So only studying the difference between rural and urban will not illustrate what is the reason behind the temperature difference that is we are experiencing right now. So that is the methodological limitation that was happening in urban island studies. So what was happening is that they were studying about the long-term durations of the studies, but they weren't experiencing that urban heat island effect, and the curve was flattening. So there was a need for incorporating more parameters that will illustrate the concern or reason behind these heat island effects. So many studies in Western countries happen which try to incorporate the morphological characters or the physical characters of the urban areas into understanding what is the temperature difference that was happening. So even several studies in China and elsewhere began classifying urban and rural not based on the traditional definitions that we have, but few other parameters such as nighttime light and time varying like user databases. So even though they were not fully giving the picture why things are happening the way they are. So there are in 2012 Stewart and Co are the researchers that incorporated morphological characteristics and they refer to the urban design parameters that are morphological parameters such as what is the height difference, what is the mid-rise, high-rise characteristics, or what is the compactness and the density of the development, which will of course impact on the wind flows of the areas or the temperature differences that will happen. So what they did is they classified urban areas into a logical classification, meaning a more larger class is classified into subclassification by a differentiating factor. So they incorporated the urban design literature to classify or to select the parameters on which they will classify the urban areas. So there are 10 build type classes which are based on the height, the compactness and the material, and then there are 6 natural type classes which are dependent upon the vegetations as well as the land cover, that is it a bare soil or it is an agricultural area or it is a paved area. So there are 16 classes based on which the urban areas were classified and the temperature studies were undertaken.
I would just like to add the fact that certain LCZs do not fall under the context of smaller Indian cities. So there is a certain class called compact high-rises, which is not really present in the bounds of Pune city or BMC. And we will not observe these certain classes, so we have managed to exclude them from our study.
Yeah, so as we said, we will come down to Pune as a case area. Of course, from 1990s, Pune has experienced quite a lot of built-up land. So this is an growth map or growth direction map of Pune city, which was in a city development report of 2015 by BMC, and it clearly illustrates that the recent corridors and the IT sectors are pulling the urban development outside the city. So this is the map that illustrates what is the current scenario of and how the built-up area is getting spread out in the peripheral areas of the cities. So that subsequently led to incorporating more and more peri-urban villages into a municipal boundary. So these two maps quite illustrate that. So in 2015 study, it was highlighted that almost 80% of the open land is under the built-up category, and the built-up is increasing more than the population increase, which illustrates the spillover or the peri-urban development of the Pune area. So first the 23 surrounding villages were added in the PMC boundary, and now there are 34 villages are now in process of getting incorporated into PMC boundary, and these villages where rural in character are now coming into an urban characteristics. So if we see Baner area, which butts onto Pune Bangalore highway, which connects to the Mumbai expressway, and that's why if you can see these 3 images within 5 years and the extent of the development it has happened. So you will see a lot of vacant land out here, but you will see the development spilling out of this is the highway area, and quite densification happening around this area, and still the development is spilling out on the western side. So this kind of development creates a Pune a compelling case for incorporating a local classification zone to understand the urban climate in the Pune city. So coming down to the need of the city, of course, the morphological characteristics gives out kind of quantifiable parameters to understand the local climate. So what is that? So if we take a large tract of land, it's not just the land use, but also the physical characteristics. What is the roughness of that surface, or what is the compactness of that surface that influences the wind flow direction, and of course the materials reflecting out the heat, that also plays a crucial role in understanding the local climates in the urban areas. And that is why morphology is basis for this kind of studies, which gives out a quantifiable parameter why these temperature changes are happening. So of course, as I said, Pune has undergone quite a lot of change, and lot of studies are claiming that these urbanization is corresponding to a shift in summer LSTs. So one study gives out that 5% of the increase in the local surface, land surface temperature is happening.
2 minutes.
Try to run. So yeah, that is one of the needs of the study, that we wanted to understand morphology of Pune city, and we wanted to incorporate it into local classifications of city. So of course the objectives are, we have classified the Pune area in local climatic zones in 2015 and 2025, and then we try to correlate it with local land surface temperatures, and we will interpret our findings. So I'll just
go to the key conclusions. What did you find in terms of the?
So this is the local LCZ map of Pune city that we have generated. This is a 2015 and 2025 map, and you can clearly see that, if you can see the, so this is the 2015 map, which you can see there are classes of dense trees and bare soil and scrublands. And if you can see these lines coming out, these are the built-up areas that are spilling out on these natural areas. So of course in 2025 many of these zones have transferred itself to open built-up categories. And it is, you can see the major conversation of agricultural and semi-natural land into built-up forms in all these peripheral areas. So you can see these happening on the major corridors on the west side, also on the eastern side and the southern sides, which springs out of the city. So we have selected two cases, two wards. One is a Baner ward and other is a Kharadi ward. So the major difference is that you can see the hilly areas surrounding the Baner area, while the Kharadi is more on a flatter surfaces. So if you go through the distribution of LCZs in Baner area, we can clearly see that the scrublands and lowlands are increasingly getting converted into a built-up categories. So there are paved areas, there are compact developments happening, there are open kind of developments happening, but they are not very high intensity. They are mid and low rise. And next. Yeah. And of course the same case with Baner areas. So the interesting findings that we have right now is we try to see which class is getting converted into a built classes and what is the LST temperature. So in case of Baner area, we can see there is natural to built transition happening, and there is a strong warming of the temperature is happening. So all kinds of brushed up lands, dense trees are getting converted into built classes, and which are shooting up the temperature by 2 to 5%. And the major finding is that the open built classes are coming up in Baner area, which are the major contributors in warming up the area, as compared to the compact development that is happening in Baner. So we can clearly see that loss of vegetation in Baner area, especially of dense trees, combined with mid-rise and open low-rise development is substantially increasing the LST of that area. In case of Kharadi, there is a stark difference. the temperatures are rising up as compared to the built area because previously there were more paved areas and more bare soil areas which already shot up the temperature. But now it's getting converted into open and compact kind of development, and it's again increasing the LSTs by 4 to 5 degrees Celsius. Yes. So if we see the difference or the comparisons, we can see that open built categories are the contributing factors in increasing the land surface temperature in Pune. And in case of Barnage area, there was a vegetation, but the loss of that vegetation is the contributing factor in increasing the land surface temperature. So of course the discussion is that the open categories, I mean, a lot of the literature is claiming that the compact development is the factor that is increasing the LSTs, but in case of Pune city, the open built categories are the ones that are increasing the LSTs, and the height of the buildings is not the factor yet in increasing the temperatures. So of course the Pune pattern aligns with compact zoning is not the primary contributors, but the spread out open built forms are generating more LST rises. So of course the peri-urban area in the Pune city consists of incomplete street canyons, low and medium rise apartments, empty plots, fragmented vegetations and high reflective materials, and the undergoing constructions are maybe the parameters that are contributing to the LSTs. So of course the literature does claim that these kind of studies may transform into urban planning policies. So we interpret that these kind of zoning or the classification of cities could transform themselves into two-place zoning. In case of Pune city, the open categories could be the intervention areas where vegetations or the green guidelines can happen, which are right now only based on the per capita greening parameter. Instead of that, the morphological characteristics can be a contributing factor in greening of the area or developing the TCRs or having the material standards that can contribute to more mitigating the LST change that are happening. Although the major challenge is that SEZ could subclassify too much, that could be difficult to understand for the urban planners, or too much generalization of the SEZ could not be the transforming or cannot be integrated into urban planning policies. So of course the way ahead that we will refine this study more and further.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Very interesting presentation, and I think some good findings to be explored further. All right. So thank you for that. Next presenter is Mr. Sagar, and his topic is anchoring aspirations, exploring the critical link between perception of tenure security and incremental housing upgradation. So Sagar, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Today, I will be presenting my research titled Anchoring Aspirations to explore the critical link between perception of tenure security and incremental housing regulations, creation of sites and services, settlement in Ambedkar Convention. Just give a background about how the research came about. As part of the research here at the Institute for Housing and Urban Studies at Erasmus University, which connects master thesis students' master thesis to local NGOs and organizations which are working on their real-world projects. Going forward, to give a background about Ambedkar Nagar, The settlement was established way back in the 1980s, several decades ago, under these by the Tamil Nadu Urban Habitat Development Board, formerly known as Tamil Nadu Slum Clearance Board, from areas such as Egmore, Sanincheri, etc., to build build railway stations and bridges, etc. Part of the sites and services approach, the households were allotted a plot of land along with small sort of incentive to start to trigger the construction, post which, based on their economic development, the beneficiaries were allowed to incrementally develop their land. What makes American method particularly compelling is the fact that even after 40 years, these folks have still not received their land titles. Yet, as you can see, settlement has undergone in rapid urbanization in terms of the way the neighborhood is settled. People have been able to invest heavily in their homes. Also, the fact that there were multi-story houses, people have also got rental rooms. All this points the question of about how as to how did people invest in their homes despite the legal status being unreserved. As you can see, there are still houses to this day which are in this particular state, even when they came down to the residents who are able to eventually, as the family expanded, have been able to incrementally develop their homes. The question of why this particular case matters is because as existing research on daily security focuses on land documents, titles, and formal acquisition. However, on ground, people have primarily relied on perceived security, which is a subjective sense of stability, and their confidence to continue to live on the land and based on the everyday signals which they receive from the ground. One thing when the people were relocated from different areas was the fact that they received this something called the allotment letter, where which mentions basic details about the particular family or family members, and a picture was sitting in front of their house. One of the conditions was that every month the beneficiary pays a small amount to the government, post which at the end of the 10th year, the title, they would receive the land title. But still to this day, majority of residents have yet to receive land titles. Forward, in terms of the research gap in the question, there's limited long-term analysis in terms of sites and services, particularly in Chennai, especially after several decades have passed, which creates a gap of understanding how the project came about, what are the legal ambiguities, the administrative burdens in the particular project. To understand, my research seeks to understand the question as to what are the factors that influence the perception of energy security, what are the factors which contribute to incremental housing and relation to the context of sites and services, and what is the role of government in mediating or moderating this particular relationship. Because the same thing is explained in terms of the conceptual framework of how this interplay of relationship happens. To explore these questions, I conducted a qualitative explanatory research where I conducted 23 semi-structured interviews. 14 respondents were first generation residents of original lotteries who were the initial beneficiaries of that particular scheme, who possess the allotment title. The second set of the 9 respondents were second generation residents who purchased these lands through informal means, say in terms of a signed agreement, a piece of paper, or some even verbal agreements that they were able to transfer the land to that particular asset. Fieldwork also included interviews, document analysis, observations, and transact works. One, the fact that due to the sensitive nature of the particular case, the residents were not open to talking about their land title, the status of the legal land legality. Going forward, hence snowball sampling was employed in interviews conducted in Tamil, and translation and transcription was done. Some of the challenges which I faced was the fact that the research lied in the period of the general 2024 general elections, due to which several government officials were not open to talk about that particular aspect of specifically in terms of land. Also, the beneficiaries themselves, because since it's been so many years, every election brings a small hope that maybe they would probably receive land one day. The hybrid polling was conducted, a deductive and inductive method. Some of the indicators were evidence of failure, evidence of perception, embeddedness, access to services, and administrative impact. First major finding pertaining to perceived energy security. For many, security is built on the simple fact that they were actually resettled by the government. This act of being relocated states that the foundational legitimacy for their presence. Others rely on long-term residents, saying that we've lived here for so many years, and it's not just me who would be affected, it's not just my neighbor, but it's the whole neighborhood, it's the whole area, and we also know that there are several other such areas who do not have land titles. And also the fact that the payments were made initially for about 2 or 3 years, the payments were made upon receiving the land titles. But after 5-6 years, the government officials stopped coming to collect that particular payment, so which again created that sense of confusion of what the status of their land particular is. These everyday forms of evidence substitute to formal documentation. At the same time, the allotment letter also was a starting point for their cementing their place in American National. Through this allotment letter, they were also able to first get an electric connection, post which they were also able to get water connection, and all this compounded to cementing their place. Eventually, they were also able to get a voter ID and an Aadhaar card, all through this particular allotment. But in terms of particularly, the original allottees derived their perception from the allotment letter, while the second generation residents primarily on long-term residents and social justice. One thing that was strongly observed was the fact that these residents have strong social cohesion among themselves, among how they're able to sustain it. Another important aspect is the access of services, particularly in American National. The second major finding concerning incremental housing accreditation is the fact that they started from huts or small tracts of land, but they were eventually able to build a small house and 2-story above, and also being able to rent their particular house. Another small important aspect to note here is some beneficiaries were actually able to receive the land titles by making due diligence. And also there was a few beneficiaries who were able to tap into the PMAY scheme. So this creates a confusion of about, okay, they did not have the land title, but to the allotment tender, how did they receive, how were they able to access PMAY schemes? Another aspect is that there were the triggers for upgradation. For example, it's been 40 years, the families have expanded, the incomes have grown, they're slowly able to save up money, build a home, able to rent. That was one of the aspects which would trigger for incremental upgradation. And second, giving access to government subsidy schemes throughout the years. And also, as water facilities improved, initially they had a small pipe connection. Post which again the water was not regular settlements, they had private water tankers coming in, etc. And also the fact that there were several flooding situations in Ambedkar settlements around, due to which that was one of the triggers for incremental upgradation. So what they did was they were rising the buildings. Every building that you see is almost 2 feet above us, so that they are able to sustain from that flooding situation. What is significant is that residents justify these investments based not on legal certainty, but on perceived stability rooted in lived experiences. Incrementality was not seen as an economic strategy, but also as a form of identity, saying that we've worked hard for this. We've been able to save up, and that's how we've been able to come up in this particular neighborhood. The third finding relates to the role of government in shaping this perception. Initial administrative actions such as the government officials coming to collect the dues gave them the hope that yes, we would receive the land title one day, which created the foundation for perceived legitimacy. Over time, however, engagement has been limited. One could be potential reasons such as the governments have changed and there has been confusion about how the project was supposed to go forward. So, over time, the fee collection stopped roughly, which contributed to this particular confusion. So residents sometimes relied on independent services for getting water or other maintenance of other services. The long delay in issuing these title deeds became more complicated as years of generations passed. In conclusion, this research shows that perceived tenure security in Ambedkar Nagar is constructed through long-term residence, social cohesion, and selected forms of administrative engagement, rather than through formal documentation. Residents continue to invest in implemented housing because they perceive that tenure security as stable enough, even if the legal status currently remains unresolved. The prolonged delays in issuing of titles and inconsistencies of service provision have further contributed to this uncertainty. But that has not diminished the resilient spirits of the residents who have committed to improving their homes. Ultimately, this case demonstrates how the formally planned sites and services settlement has evolved into an informally consolidated neighborhood shaped by the residents' agencies and everyday government practices more so than by formal processes. I would like to acknowledge my supervisor who was instrumental in conducting this research, Vanessa Peter, who was also instrumental in aiding the communities on the ground, local partner university who connected to organizations, and EFL Dutch Foundation, EFL System, who funded this particular research for me to conduct the field. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Sagar. Very interesting presentation. And we have got the last one, Dr. Shweta Pai from Institute of Social and Economic Change. The title is Stringency of Land Use Regulation, Evidence from Indian Cities.
A small correction, I'm not Dr. Shweta Pai, I'm still pursuing my PhD, and this paper is along with my PhD supervisor, Professor Kalai Shrita, from Mumbai. So I'm going to speak about the stringency of land use regulations and its evidence from India cities. So when we look at land use regulations, we all know that they are introduced with the aim of reducing the negative externalities of urbanization. But when regulations become overly stringent, then they have several negative consequences in the form of both in land and housing markets. It's seen in labor markets, and it's also seen in urban form, and so on and so forth. So the research question that we are trying to answer over here is how stringent are land use regulations in India? Because there have been several papers, and you can see in literature people talking about land use regulations in India being very stringent when compared to regulations in developed countries. So if you look at cities of the developed world, our land use regulations are supposed to be very stringent. So the objective here is to determine the stringency of regulations and to identify its determinants. Now we come to the theory of this very simple thing. So the difference between the marginal cost of construction of units versus the actual price at which it is sold is called as the shadow price, and this shadow price increases as the stringency of land use regulations increase. So why does that happen? Not just because sometimes when the stringency of regulations increases, it completely does not allow construction in some cases, but in other cases it also increases cost of construction, it increases cost of compliance, and it increases cost due to procedural delays. So we are looking at all those aspects while trying to measure the stringency of land use regulation. So we could measure stringency of regulations in two ways. The first one is the more direct method where we use an index. We develop an index and then we measure the stringency. And the second method is by using market data, and we can look at the difference between the marginal cost of construction versus the sale price, or we could look at aspects like land price being the dependent variable and taking different variables like FAR and other things as the independent variable and seeing what is the coefficient of that, and the higher the coefficient, the more stringent the regulations. So these are all methods that have been developed, but getting market data for 66 cities in India was a very difficult task. So I have chosen the index method. Now in the index method, I have based it on three major indices from across the world. So the WRLURI, or it is called as the Wharton Residential Land Use Regulatory Index. This is developed in US, and it has surveyed about 2,500 communities in the United States, and there has been a follow-up survey in 2018 also. This study is from 2008. The first index was developed in 2008. There is a follow-up study in 2018 which has kind of added a temporal aspect to the stringency of regulations in the US. The CILP is one which is developed in Argentina, and it is called as the CIPUB Index of Land Policy. And this surveys about 285 odd cities in Argentina. Then we have the CERDI, which is Ease of Residential Development Index in Switzerland, and that looks at about 700 odd communities in Switzerland. And we also have a study in India by Damle and Uday from 2022, which looks at the stringency of regulations and its impact on cost of living in Mumbai and Navi Mumbai only. So in this case, what we have done is we have tried to compare the regulatory stringency for 66 cities. These 66 cities are the million plus cities of India. So as per census 2011, we had 53 cities which were million plus, but in the absence of census 2021, we have used the UN population prospects data, and we have selected these 66 cities. And we have focused mostly on the zoning and development regulations, development control regulations. And one important contribution of this study is that it measures both de jure and de facto stringency. So de jure is something that is written on paper, what is there in the regulations, and de facto is what is actually happening on ground, whether it is being implemented properly on ground. So how is it that we have tried to measure the de facto stringency? In the absence of any secondary data which measures, what is the time taken for getting approvals and things like that, it is available for a few cities, I wouldn't say no, but it is not available for all 66 cities. So we had to go back to the primary method of collecting data. So the de jure stringency measures are taken completely through textual analysis. We have gone through all the regulations and collected information on the de jure stringency measures. And for de facto stringency measures, we have conducted primary surveys. And in this, we have spoken to both the actors, like the market actors, such as developers, as well as where in cities which did not have several developers, we have spoken to architects and consultants. And in case of the government actors, we have spoken to urban planners, the chief town planners of different cities. So this is how we have collected the data. And the residential the index is called as the residential land use regulatory index, and we have divided it into 7 sub-indices. So the first sub-index deals with the zoning regulations. So zoning regulations in the sense how many different zones are there in the land use map of any city. Then what are the does the regulation allow mixed land use? Does it allow change of land use in the cities? How much time does it take to change these land uses, and so on and so forth. Okay, I just keep continuing. So the second sub-index is called as the Land Subdivision and Development Index. This basically deals with plotted developments. We look at aspects such as participation of the private sector in land assembly and development. So if you look at cities like Delhi and Chandigarh, they were not really allowing private participation in land assembly and development until recently. But recently they have chosen the Land Pooling Act in order to allow private sector participation. But what is actually happening on the ground is that there are a lot of things that have to be changed in terms of institutional mechanism. For example, the Master Plan 2041 is yet to be notified. So there are several such. There are some amendments required in the DDA Act for the Land Pooling Act to become active in the city. So these are all the kind of de facto stuff that we have looked at to measure the stringency of regulations, because even though on paper private sector participation is allowed, on ground it is not really happening. Then in land subdivision we have looked at things like setbacks, maximum height and things like that. And the third one is on density norms index. This one.
The light has gone here for speed.
Yeah. So the third sub-index is the density norms index. This is about, this deals with high-rise buildings, it deals with group housing and such. So here we look at very important aspects such as ground coverage, and we look at FAR. FAR is a very important aspect when it comes to converting land area into built-up area. So the lower the FAR, we are able to get lesser built-up area. So in many cities today in India, it is not just the free FAR that is provided. There are various other components such as the purchasable FAR or the premium FAR that we call. So we can pay an extra premium and purchase additional FAR. There are also aspects such as transfer of development rights, and there is also another concept called as fungible FAR. So we have considered all these aspects to measure which cities give the highest FAR, and we have also looked at what percentage of this FAR is free compared to the total FAR. So a lot of the FAR is purchasable, so it is actually increasing the cost of construction for housing. So we are looking at what is the percentage that is free versus purchasable, and we are also looking at the cost at which this purchasable FAR is. That is also going to affect our cost of construction. So we are taking all these things into consideration while developing this index. Then the fourth sub-index is public goods index, and in this index we are looking at all the reservations that have to be made for roads, for EWS housing, for parks and open spaces, and we are also looking at it in terms of civic amenities. So and in terms of de facto stringency, in this case we are also looking at what are the ways in which the developer is able to bypass the provision of these kind of public goods. So for example, if you are providing EWS housing in some of the cities, there is a rule which says that okay, you can pay a shelter fee and not really provide the EWS housing. So there are ways in which the burden of providing the EWS housing is actually eased for the developer. So that makes the regulatory environment a little bit less stringent. So it is more flexible in these cities. So we are looking at all those aspects for the de facto stringency measures. Then there are three other sub-indices. One of them is the building norms. We are looking at what are the parking requirements, what are the sustainability requirements, and so on and so forth. Then we are looking at the redevelopment index. So are there regulations which are promoting redevelopment of old properties. And we are also looking at the building permits index. Here we are looking at how much time it takes for approvals of a multi-story building in any city. We are looking at aspects like is there an online building permit system, and is it actually active, because many of them have it on paper but it may not be working on ground. So we have looked at all these aspects to develop this index. So once we have collected the information on all this various aspects that I have mentioned over here, what we have done is we have set the minimum and the maximum scores, and then using a human development index methodology, the HDI methodology, we have converted this data into a value between 0 and 1. So after doing that, for each sub-index we have aggregated the score using an arithmetic mean, and for the 7 sub-indices we have all the 7 sub-index scores we have aggregated using a geometric mean method, and then we have ranked cities in the order of 1 to 66. So cities which are rank 1 is the most flexible in its regulation, whereas a city which is ranked 66 is the most complex in its regulations, or most stringent in its regulations. So
Yes, discussion.
So I'm just skipping all the summary statistics and all that for all the different things. So if you look at the city ranks itself, for the overall stringency, Hyderabad is the city that ranks 1, which has the least stringency or the most flexible in terms of regulations, and Patna is the most stringent that we have. And if we look at it in terms of all the sub-indices, so and after the geometric mean aggregation of all the scores of these 7 sub-indices, we get the overall land use regulatory index score. So if you look at zoning restrictiveness index, Hyderabad is again the most flexible. Kanpur or some of the cities in Uttar Pradesh are the most stringent. If you look at the plotted developments, then it is the cities of Maharashtra that are more flexible, and Guwahati is the most stringent. So like this, for each of these things we have looked at which are the most stringent and which are the most flexible cities. We have an entire list of for all sub-indices we have ranked the cities in the order of 1 to 66. So once we have done this, what is it that we are learning? So we see that cities in South India are actually more flexible compared to its northern peers, and we are also looking at cities which have a population of greater than 10 billion have more flexible regulations as compared to cities that are smaller. This could be because there is a lot of growth pressure, and then they have to ease their regulations. When we look at correlation matrix for all the sub-indices, we see that there is not much in terms of high correlation, and that is one of the, it could be because each of the sub-index is looking at a very different aspect. There is not much overlap between the sub-indices. So the correlation is low, and we also see that some of the sub-indices are negatively correlated. So if you look at most of the literature from other countries, we see that if a city is stringent in one regulation, it is stringent across regulations. But that's not the case here in India. We see that some of the cities are very stringent in terms of zoning maybe, but it is not so stringent in terms of subdivision regulation. So like that we are seeing some negative correlations as well. And now we try to look at the main, the other part of the study is to look at what is determining the stringency. Is it only welfare, or are there other reasons? So if you look at literature across the world, there are many reasons. It used to be welfare at one point of time, but it is not welfare anymore. It is, the stringency is used from the political economy perspective, because homeowners want their home values to go up. So the more stringent the regulation, the less supply in that city, and therefore the property values are going to go up. So that is one of the reasons. The other reason is city governments also support the homeowners because the higher the property values, the more the property tax that they can collect, and lesser the stress on infrastructure, because if the city is not very densely populated, that means they have to spend less on infrastructure, social and physical. So these are some of the reasons why they continue to keep the regulations stringent. They do not make them flexible to allow more people to come into. And we also see that in the developed countries, regulatory stringency is used as a mechanism to exclude people from certain communities. So for example, if you are a low income household, or if you are, we can also see racial segregation basically using land use regulations. And the other determinant of land use regulation is also the availability of land for development. So suppose there are cities where there is a lot of land which is undevelopable, maybe because of the terrain or because of physical features such as there are too many water bodies or whatever reasons. So when there is lesser supply of land, the regulations are more stringent. So this is what we see, and now we try to see, is it what is defining things in India also. So
wrap it up please. Yes.
Yeah, this is the last. So we have looked at, we have used various variables to capture these four major themes under determinants, and what we see is that home ownership, per capita GDP and population density, these are the three things which are highly, we see relationship of that with overall stringency of regulations. So home ownership, although there is not much public consultation when we are actually preparing the land use regulations, there is an indirect influence of homeowners in influencing the stringency of regulations. The second one is in terms of population density. Obviously, cities that are more dense, they adopt more stringent regulations because in order to avoid more people from coming into cities. And we also have per capita GDP. So, but it is negatively correlated. So, the richer the cities, if you look at literature around the world, the richer the city, the more stringent the regulations. But in case of India, it is richer the city, less stringent the regulation. The reason could be because of the growth pressures that we have. More people are migrating into these cities, and therefore they have to make their regulations more, more flexible so that they can absorb these people into the cities. So, in order to conclude, there are 2 points that I would like to raise. The first one is in terms of welfare economics, it is affecting the population density. That means our regulations are opposing density. If they are opposing density, density is a very important factor for our economic development. So, are we doing the right thing, or should we start relooking the aspect of our land use regulation? Should we look at it more from managing density perspective rather than opposing density perspective? And for that, one of the important things is to improve the capacities of the ULBs, because that is when we will be able to bring in more density, or we will be able to manage whatever densities we have in our cities. So I'd like to conclude.
Thank you. That is very good. I think this is quite an, I'm an urban planner and I could see some of these things correlated as well. To be actually going a little bit more deeper into that, there are so many other factors which may need to be considered, because comparing across the cities, and because state is a planning authority, so it is the state which is an entity which gives regulations. Like in Maharashtra, it is UDCPR, and that governs every.
Ideally, it should be the cities which are making the development control regulations, but it is overruled by the states.
Yes. Thank you. But very interesting. We can have a chat. I am in Pune.
Sure, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I think we have had very interesting presentations, and everybody was really listening so carefully. And we are running out of time. And if you permit, we can skip the questions. But presenters are here for a couple of days, and you can actually talk to all of them in your own time, and seek some clarification or questions. So again, thank you very much, and a big round of applause to all of the presenters. Thank you. interesting, at least approach, but this can be really defined and you can get some more definite answers. So, very
Each of these papers we spend.
oh yes,
தமிழ்ல வனிசா கினிசாலாம் நம்ம ஏரியா
Other projects were submitted, but I think this particular one was funded by the government of India.